Single dad was too late to stop his son from saying, "My dad can make her walk again." The CEO froze. "My dad can make her walk again." The words came softly, so soft they could have floated past unnoticed. But they didn't. They hung in the air like steam rising from hot coffee on a cold morning, gentle but impossible to ignore. Claire Whitmore had just taken her seat. She hadn't even removed her sunglasses yet when the voice reached her. She turned slowly. A boy stood a few feet away, maybe 7 or 8, wearing a faded blue hoodie and sneakers patched with silver duct tape. He was pointing at her daughter, at Lily. Claire's brows furrowed. "Excuse me?" The boy looked straight at her, eyes wide and clear like windows that let everything in. I said, "My dad can make her walk again." There was a clink behind the counter, just a single glass tapping porcelain. But Daniel Ray froze. He'd been polishing a tray of cups when the words hit. Now he stood still, jaw-tight eyes locked on the boy. His son, Micah. Daniel moved quickly, wiping his hands and stepping toward him. His voice was calm, but lined with tension. "Micah, come on, buddy. Go sit down." Micah didn't move. "But Dad." Daniel crouched slightly, placing a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. "Now, please." Something in his tone made Micah go quiet. He glanced at Claire once more, then turned and walked back to his sketchpad in the corner booth. Daniel exhaled, slowly, turned to Claire and offered a polite nod. "I'm sorry, ma'am. My son has a vivid imagination. Please don't mind him." His voice was low, almost too careful, as if every word was being weighed before it left his lips. Claire studied him, this man in a worn apron and rolled-up sleeves, tall with weathered hands and a gaze that looked like it hadn't rested in years. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she glanced down at her daughter Lily, 6 years old, sitting silently in her sleek black wheelchair, her legs bundled beneath thermal wraps, hands clutching a stuffed bear. But Lily wasn't staring at the boy. She was staring at his father. And for the first time in weeks there was something different in her eyes. A flicker, not of hope, of recognition. Daniel returned to the counter, pretending to focus on cups again. But his hands weren't steady. His fingers paused on a mug for too long. He wasn't hearing coffee orders anymore. He was hearing a voice. "My dad can make her walk again." It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did, because it wasn't just a child's innocent claim. It was a memory, a mirror, and a question Daniel hadn't let himself ask in years. Back at his booth, Micah picked up his pencil and began drawing again. He sketched a small room with sunlight streaming through a window, casting light onto 2 figures, one sitting, the other kneeling beside her, hands outstretched. In his drawing, the girl was standing. Just barely, but standing. Across the diner, Claire tried to focus on the menu, but her thoughts kept drifting back. Not to what the boy had said, but how he said it. There had been no hesitation, no theatrics, just certainty. The kind of certainty adults unlearn. The kind of certainty you only keep if you've seen it happen. She glanced at Lily. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Lily nodded. Then quietly, "Is that man sad?" Mommy Claire blinked. "What man?" She gestured subtly toward the counter. "That dad." Claire hesitated. "Why do you ask?" Lily's voice was soft but steady. "Because when he said sorry, it didn't sound like he was sorry for the words. It sounded like he was sorry. They might be true." Claire didn't respond, but something shifted inside her. An hour later, they left the diner. Daniel didn't come to the door, but Micah did. He waved shyly at Lily as they passed, and Lily, she smiled. A real smile, small but unmistakable. That night, Claire sat alone in their hotel room. Lily was fast asleep, curled beside her stuffed bear. Claire opened her leather-bound notebook to jot down a few work notes, but instead she found herself writing a single line. "A child never lies about what they believe. Adults just forget how to." She stared at the page for a long time. Next to her notebook sat the crumpled receipt from the diner. On the top corner, scribbled in pen, was the name of their server, Daniel R. The name lingered in her mind all morning. Daniel R. Claire couldn't stop thinking about it. Not because she believed in miracles. She didn't, not anymore. But there was something about the way his son had spoken and the way he hadn't. It was like watching someone try to hold back an ocean using only silence. She sat across from Lily in the hotel breakfast lounge sipping black coffee she wasn't tasting. Lily played absent-mindedly with her cereal, drawing little circles in the milk with her spoon. "Do you think he was mad?" she asked. Claire blinked. "Who?" "The man. Daniel." Claire paused, then shook her head. "No. I think he was surprised." Lily was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Surprised that someone still remembers." Claire looked at her daughter and saw something flicker behind her quiet expression, a kind of recognition. Later that afternoon, Claire made a call. Not to her office, not to a specialist, but to the front desk at the hotel. "There's a diner down the street," she asked. "The one with the blue awning. Do you know the owner?" The voice on the line was cheerful. "Ah, you mean Harper's Place. Family run. Sweet folks. You need a table." Claire hesitated. "No, just wondering. Do you happen to know someone who works there? Name's Daniel. I don't have a last name, just Daniel R. Maybe." A pause. "Daniel Ray, the clerk, said. Works mornings. Used to be something else, I think, teacher or therapist or something like that. But keeps to himself now." Quiet guy? That was all she needed. That evening she went back. Not with Lily, not with an entourage, just herself, and no makeup this time. No armor. Just a woman walking into a small-town diner with a name in her pocket and a question that had been growing louder each hour. Why did that man look like he used to believe in something and forgot how to? Daniel noticed her the moment she stepped in. He was wiping down the counter, back half-turned. But the energy in the room shifted the way it does when someone walks in carrying a truth they're not ready to say out loud. She sat at the same booth. He approached after a moment, towel still in hand, voice measured. "You're back." Claire nodded. "I had questions. About your special." Daniel almost smiled. "Breakfast or the kid?" Claire's lips twitched. "Both." A pause. Then more seriously, "Actually, I came because I want to understand what your son meant." Daniel stiffened slightly but didn't sit. Instead, he glanced over toward the corner where Micah had sat drawing the morning before. "Kids say a lot of things," he said. "Yes," Claire replied, "but not always by accident." He sighed, sat across from her, slowly folding his hands together. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Claire leaned in. "He said you could help her walk, just like you helped someone else before." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I never promised anyone anything." "I didn't ask what you promised," she said softly. "I'm asking what you once believed you could do." Daniel looked down at his hands. They were still, but the knuckles were white. "There was a time," he murmured, "when I thought helping people was the same as saving them. That if I just tried hard enough, stayed long enough, cared deep enough, I could fix things." Claire watched him, absorbing every word like a thread being pulled from a hidden part of him. And now she asked. He looked up, eyes tired, voice almost gone. "Now I mop floors, I clean tables, and I teach my son that there's strength in staying quiet." Claire exhaled slowly. "Is that really what you want him to learn?" Silence. Then no, Daniel said. "But it's safer than learning hope." Claire leaned back, resting her hand on the table. "You know," she said, "when my daughter was first diagnosed, everyone had answers. Surgeons, specialists, faith healers. They all told me what she might become, but no one ever asked who she was before the chair." Daniel tilted his head, intrigued despite himself. "And you?" Claire's eyes glistened, but her voice held steady. "I just want someone who sees her as more than a patient." Daniel looked away. "Maybe your son does." That made Claire pause, and smile faintly. He said it like it was a fact, like it wasn't even up for debate. Daniel nodded slowly. He's seen things. Things I didn't mean for him to see. Maybe that's how children inherit hope through what we forget to hide. Outside the diner, the sky was turning amber. Claire stood to leave, pulling her coat around her shoulders. She paused. I'm not asking you to fix her. I'm asking you to meet her. Just meet her, Daniel. Daniel hesitated. I wouldn't know where to start. Claire looked at him. Really looked. Start with who she is, not what's broken. As she walked away, Daniel remained seated, the towel still in his hand, forgotten. The table no longer wiped. Just a man sitting in front of a truth he'd tried to bury. And outside the window, Micah's drawing still lay folded in Daniel's back pocket. A girl standing in the sun. Daniel stood at the threshold of the room for a long time. The doorknob was cool beneath his hand, untouched for months, maybe years. He'd told himself it was just a storage room. Just a place with old books, broken tools, and things that didn't matter anymore. But it wasn't. It was a vault of ghosts. And he knew that if he opened that door even just a little, the man he used to be might start breathing again. Micah peeked around the hallway corner barefoot, cradling a worn sketch pad. He watched his dad with curious eyes. You gonna open it? Daniel didn't turn around. Just thinking. You always say that when you're about to do something hard. Daniel gave a quiet laugh, no humor in it. You notice everything, huh? Micah shrugged. Only the stuff that matters. Daniel sighed and finally turned the knob. The room creaked open like an old wound. Inside it smelled like dust and memories. Stacks of notebooks, binders with diagrams, taped up photographs of leg spines, children on balance beams. There were tennis balls, weighted bands, even a folded therapy table leaning against the wall like it had been waiting. And on the desk, still untouched, was the framed picture of Daniel in his white coat, kneeling beside a young boy who was learning to stand. That boy hadn't just walked again. He'd run, into his mother's arms, sobbing. Whole. Daniel exhaled. The memory stabbed deep. He picked up a notepad and ran his thumb over the faint pencil marks still there. Exercise plans, handwritten encouragement, a line circled twice. They have to believe before they can move. Later that night, Micah sat cross-legged on the living room floor sketching. Daniel sat nearby, unusually quiet. What's she like? Daniel finally asked. Micah didn't look up. Lily. Yeah. She's not sad like some people think. She's quiet, but not because she's scared. She's just waiting for the world to catch up to her. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty deep thing to say for a kid. Micah looked up. That's what you used to say, remember, about the kids you helped? Daniel fell silent. The next day, Claire and Lily arrived at his doorstep. Not the diner, his house. Claire held no expectations in her eyes, just a calm curiosity. The kind you get after life has wrung all the assumptions out of you. Daniel opened the door slowly, still unsure why he'd said yes. Lily sat in her wheelchair hugging the same bear. Their eyes met. Daniel knelt slowly. Not like a doctor, not like a savior, just a man lowering himself to her eye level. Hi, Lily, he said gently. She smiled, then tilted her head. Your house smells like cinnamon. Daniel blinked. Cinnamon? Yeah. Like something good happened here once. Claire's breath caught slightly. Daniel's throat tightened. She doesn't see the broken. She sees what used to be warm. He stepped back and let them in. The living room was modest, books stacked beside a worn couch, children's drawings taped to the fridge. Nothing glamorous, but it was real, lived in. Lily's eyes landed on a photo on the wall, a younger Micah in overalls holding up a plastic gold medal. He looks happy, she said. Daniel followed her gaze. He is. So why do you look so scared in the picture? He turned toward her, shocked. Not by the question, but by how right she was. Claire glanced over but said nothing. In the therapy room, Daniel hesitated before switching on the light. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. He'd cleaned it the night before, quietly, as if he were setting up an altar. He wheeled the therapy table to the center. Lily looked around curiously, then whispered, "This looks like somewhere people get better." Daniel didn't answer. Not yet. He just sat across from her. "Lily, if we do this, it won't be quick. It'll take patience, and it might hurt sometimes." She nodded. "I know. And I can't promise anything." She leaned forward, gripping the edge of her chair. "But can you try?" Daniel looked at her, and for a second he wasn't afraid. Not of failure, not of pain, not of hope. "Yes," he said quietly. "I can try." Claire stood in the doorway, watching. She didn't say a word, but something inside her softened, because for the first time in a long time she wasn't watching a man offer a solution. She was watching a man offer himself, flawed, uncertain, real. That night, as Lily slept, Claire sat on Daniel's porch steps with a blanket around her shoulders. Daniel joined her, a mug of tea in hand. "She surprises you, doesn't she?" he said. Claire smiled. "Every day. A beat." "What about you?" she asked. "Do you surprise yourself sometimes?" Daniel looked at the stars. "Only when I let myself remember who I used to be." Claire didn't respond right away. Then softly, "Maybe remembering isn't weakness. Maybe it's the first step back to being whole." Daniel nodded, slowly absorbing the truth in that. Micah's voice called faintly from inside Dad. "Did you show her the room?" Daniel turned back to the door, then smiled faintly. "We opened the door," he said. "That's a start." The room was quiet, except for the rhythmic ticking of an old wall clock and the sound of Lily's shallow breaths. Daniel knelt in front of her, adjusting the foam roller near her feet. "Let me know if anything feels too much, all right." Lily nodded, her fingers curled slightly over the edges of her wheelchair. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. Claire sat quietly in the corner, arms crossed, not in judgment, but protection. She had seen so many people try, but none had ever looked her daughter in the eye like this. No clipboard, no timer, no plan recited from a textbook, just presence. Daniel rolled a tennis ball slowly beneath Lily's foot. "This isn't about muscles yet," he said softly. "It's about connection. Your brain forgot how to talk to your legs. We're just reintroducing them." Lily smiled faintly. Like old friends, Daniel looked up. Exactly. Old friends who stopped calling. "We're picking up the phone." Claire's heart clenched. Not because it was a clever metaphor, but because no one had ever spoken to Lily like she was still whole. Minutes passed. The session wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no sudden movements. Just small signs. Toes twitching, ankle shifting half a degree. Daniel noticed every flicker. "That's it," he whispered. "You're not broken. You're just asleep in places." Lily closed her eyes. "Then wake me up, okay?" Daniel's hands paused, almost trembling. He nodded. "I will." That night, Lily lay in bed, wrapped in Micah's extra blankets. Claire stood by the window, arms folded, watching moonlight spill across the floor. Daniel came in quietly with 2 mugs of tea, chamomile, no sugar. "She's stronger than she knows," he said. Claire turned. "So are you." He looked down. "Strong people don't run from their calling." Claire didn't answer right away. "No. But they sometimes crawl back to it with shaking hands and their heart on their sleeve." Daniel almost laughed. "Is that what I'm doing?" Claire looked at him, really looked. "I think you're not running anymore." And that's already a kind of healing. The following morning, Lily insisted they start early. Daniel smiled when she wheeled herself into the room before he even knocked on the door. Eager, she grinned. "Micah bet me I couldn't stay balanced on the foam for 5 seconds. I said I could do 7. Daniel raised an eyebrow. He's learning to motivate through ego. Smart boy. Claire watched from the doorway, arms loose this time, not crossed. The routine grew. Every morning before the diner, every evening after homework. Balance drills, sensory games, mirror work. But Daniel didn't just train Lily's body. He asked questions no doctor ever had. "What scares you the most about walking again?" Lily had blinked. "That I'll fall. And then people will say I shouldn't have tried." Daniel nodded. "Falling is part of walking. So is getting back up. You don't owe anyone perfection. Only effort." She stared at him. "Did you fall?" He didn't hesitate. "I fell so hard I forgot what standing felt like." She reached forward slowly, her hand resting on his arm. "Then, maybe we'll both remember together." One evening, Daniel found Claire still sitting in the therapy room long after Lily had gone to bed. She was holding a rubber band in her hand, stretching it, watching it snap back. "Funny," she murmured, "how something so simple holds so much tension." Daniel sat beside her. "It's only tense because you pulled it." She looked at him. "I think I've been pulling myself too tight for years." Daniel was quiet for a while, then said, "You know what happens if you stretch it slowly, carefully?" Claire looked at him. What he held the band out. It adapts, becomes stronger, more flexible. It still holds, but without breaking. Claire smiled sadly. "You talk like someone who didn't give up." Daniel looked down at the floor. "Maybe I just paused long enough to forget who I was." And now he looked at her. "Now I'm starting to remember. That weekend, Lily managed to stand for 2 seconds using the parallel bars. Just 2 seconds. But Claire cried quietly in the hallway while Micah cheered. Daniel didn't celebrate. He just whispered, 2 seconds today. 3 tomorrow." Lily, out of breath, smiled up at him. "One day, I'll dance." Daniel smiled back. "And we'll be clapping the loudest." That night, Daniel found an old voice recorder in a drawer. He dusted it off, pressed record, and spoke for the first time in years. Journal entry 1. She stood today. I thought it would feel like a victory, but it felt like a beginning. And that scares me. Because beginnings mean I have to show up tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. And I'm not sure I'm strong enough to keep believing every day. But I saw her eyes today, and for a second, I believed because she did. It started with a knock, not the gentle kind that belonged to friends or neighbors. This one was sharp, intentional, like a past that didn't ask permission before returning. Daniel opened the door with a dish towel still in his hand. A tall man in a dark coat stood on the porch. Older, stern, familiar. "Daniel Ray?" the man asked. Daniel froze. "Dr. Whitaker," he said stiffly. Claire, sitting on the couch with Lily, looked up. Dr. Whitaker stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Didn't expect to find you playing house," he muttered, eyeing the room. "I'm not," Daniel replied. "I'm surviving." Claire rose slowly. Who is this? Daniel's jaw tightened. An old mentor, from a life I buried. Whitaker looked at Lily. His brows twitched. "She's the girl, huh? Word's gotten around. Some billionaire's daughter getting therapy in a janitor's garage." Daniel stepped between him and Lily. "You have something to say. Say it to me." Whitaker smirked. "I came to tell you, if you're doing this for redemption, don't. It won't bring her back." The silence that followed was immediate and suffocating. Claire blinked. "Who?" she whispered. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe. "Daniel," she asked again. He turned to her slowly, eyes clouded with memories no one was supposed to see. "Her name was Grace," he said quietly. "She was 9, like Lily. Same eyes, same fire." He sat down. He never told the story, not even to Micah. But now it poured out like water from a dam cracked by time. "She was my patient. She had a spinal cord injury after a car accident. Everyone said she wouldn't walk again. But I believed she could. And for a while, she did. We made progress. We laughed. She'd tell me jokes and say she was going to run track again. I pushed her. Maybe too hard. One session, she collapsed. His voice trembled. Her spinal column hemorrhaged. She never walked again. 3 months later, she was gone. And the father, he added bitterly. He didn't blame the car, or the doctors before me. He blamed me. Took me to court, stripped my license, said I broke her for good. Claire didn't speak. No one did. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting bleeding red and gold into the horizon. I didn't touch another patient after that. I took the first job I could get that didn't involve trust or hope. Lily wheeled herself forward slowly. "You think you broke her," she said softly. "But maybe. She still believed in you, even after." Daniel looked down at her. "I don't deserve that kind of belief." Lily reached for his hand. "That's the thing about belief. It's not something you earn. It's something people give you hoping you won't throw it away." That night, Daniel sat alone in the therapy room. The light above flickered too old to burn cleanly. He looked around at the equipment. Not tools, witnesses. Every corner of the room whispered Grace's name. He closed his eyes. "Grace," he murmured, voice raw. "If I hurt you, if I pushed you too far, I've lived every day trying not to feel anything again. But there's this girl, and she looks like you when she smiles." He exhaled shakily. "I'm terrified I'll break her too, but I'm more terrified of letting her stay broken just because I'm scared." The next morning, Daniel didn't speak much. He didn't have to. He set up the room in silence, adjusted the mirrors, aligned the mats, pulled back the blinds. Claire arrived earlier than usual. She didn't bring coffee, just presence. Lily was in good spirits. "We're doing mirror work today, right?" she asked. Daniel nodded. She rolled up to the mat, then looked at him. "You look tired." He nodded again. Some memories visit louder than others. Lily smiled gently. "Then, let's make new ones." The session was tougher than usual. Lily's legs trembled as she tried to mimic her reflection. Every muscle seemed to protest. Every nerve screamed. But Daniel didn't flinch. "Breathe through it," he said. "You're not fighting your body. You're waking it up." She gritted her teeth. "It hurts. It's supposed to. That's how you know it's working." Claire watched her heart in her throat, and then Lily managed to shift her weight, just half an inch, but her entire posture changed. She gasped. Daniel's hands hovered behind her, close but not touching. "That's you," he said quietly. "Not me, not luck. You." Lily collapsed back into her chair, panting. "Did I move? You did. Can we do it again?" Daniel smiled through misty eyes. "Yes. 1,000 times, yes." That night, Claire stayed behind. She stood at the threshold of the therapy room watching Daniel clean up. "You didn't tell me any of that before." He didn't turn. "You deserved to work with someone who didn't carry ghosts." She walked inside slowly. "I don't want perfect Daniel. I want real. And you're the realest person I've ever met." He looked at her, eyes tired, soul stripped bare. "I'm afraid of what that one day she'll fall, and it'll be my fault, that I'll watch it all happen again." Claire stepped forward, then let her fall. "But be the one who helps her back up, because this time, you won't be alone." The room was quiet again, but not still. Lily stood gripping the parallel bars, her legs trembling like leaves in a storm. Daniel stood inches behind, hands outstretched but not touching. "Take your time," he whispered. "We're not measuring steps today. Just trust." She nodded, sweat beading at her temple. Her brows furrowed. Her lips were pressed into a determined line, 8 years old and already carrying the gravity of a world that had told her no too many times. Claire watched from the hallway just outside the threshold. She used to step in. Now she stayed just far enough for Lily to feel alone, but never abandoned. 1 second, Daniel counted softly. 2. Lily's knees buckled, but instead of collapsing, she caught herself. Daniel exhaled through his nose like someone who hadn't breathed in years. "You caught," that he said. Lily turned her head slightly. "Was it good? It was yours." She grinned wide, full and real. After the session, Claire found Daniel sitting on the back steps of the house, his elbows resting on his knees, watching the sky go from lavender to navy. She sat beside him. "She's changing," Claire said. "So are you," Daniel replied, not looking at her. She blinked at the horizon. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "You used to look at me like I was a risk." Claire smiled faintly. "And now," he turned to her, "now you look at me like you've been one too." The air stilled. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was honest. And that was more dangerous. That evening, as Daniel cleaned the mats and realigned the resistance bands, Micah wandered in. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy." Micah stepped onto the mat, barefoot, fidgeting. "Why don't you smile when Lily walks?" Daniel paused. "What do you mean?" Micah tilted his head. "She gets excited. She looks at you. You say good job, but your face still looks scared." Daniel didn't know what to say, so Micah kept going. "Are you scared she'll stop walking?" "No," Daniel said. Then he corrected himself. "Yes, but not for the reason you think." Micah waited. "I'm scared she'll fall, and blame herself." Daniel crouched down to his son's level. "When you were a baby, you fell a lot. On steps, off the couch, once off the laundry basket." Micah giggled. "You never told me that." "Because it didn't matter. Falling isn't failure, Micah. Staying down is. And Lily, she's not the type to stay down. But sometimes, I forget that." Micah nodded solemnly, then hugged his dad. "She won't stay down. She has you." Daniel closed his eyes. "She has all of us." 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Lily asked to walk without the bars. Claire panicked first. "Is that safe?" she asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked at Lily. "Why?" Lily shrugged. "Because I dreamed I could. And sometimes, dreams aren't lies. They're just early truths." Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. That was a line he might have said years ago, before the trial, before Grace. "We'll try," he said finally. "But if your body says stop, we stop." "Deal." Lily held out her hand like a contract. "Deal." They positioned 2 chairs 5 feet apart. Lily gripped the back of the first, took a deep breath, and let go. Her feet shuffled. 1 step, then a wobble, then 2 more. Claire's heart pounded in her throat. Daniel said nothing. He didn't dare steal the moment with words. Lily reached the second chair, collapsed into it, then burst into laughter. Claire covered her mouth, tears spilling down her face. Lily turned to Daniel. "Did you see?" He knelt down in front of her. "I didn't just see Lily. I felt it. Right here." He placed his hand over his heart. "You didn't walk across the floor. You walked through fear." Lily touched his hand briefly. "So did you." Later that night, Claire found herself sitting outside Daniel's therapy room after hours. She didn't knock. She just sat on the porch knees, hugged to her chest, staring at the stars. Daniel eventually stepped out holding 2 mugs of tea again. They sat in silence. Then she spoke. "Do you ever wonder if you're healing her? Or if she's healing you?" Daniel didn't answer for a long time. "Both," he said finally. "But the part that scares me is that I didn't know I still needed healing." Claire turned to him. "You carry it well." He shook his head. "No, I carry it quietly. There's a difference." A soft wind blew, leaves rustled. Somewhere far off, a dog barked. Claire set her mug down. "I used to think power meant control, knowing everything, being the smartest in the room, the one people feared disappointing." She paused. "But Lily, She makes me want to be someone worth believing in. And you make me want to stop pretending I'm not scared." Daniel looked at her. Really looked. "You don't have to pretend here. That's the first time someone said that to me without expecting something in return." They sat together a while longer. No labels, no promises, just warmth. And the space between two hearts slowly learning that healing doesn't always start with medicine. Sometimes it starts with presence. There was no fanfare, no orchestral music swelling in the background. Just Lily, standing, alone. Her small frame was tense eyes locked on a spot 5 feet ahead. No walker, no parallel bars, just faith and a floor that never offered mercy. Daniel stood a few feet behind, holding his breath. Claire's knuckles were white, gripping the edge of the kitchen doorway. Micah sat cross-legged on the floor, his toy cars forgotten in his lap. "Ready?" Daniel asked gently. Lily gave a single nod. Her eyes didn't blink. "I dreamed this again last night," she whispered. Daniel kneeled beside her. "Then maybe your body's finally listening." The room held its breath. Lily took a step, then another. Her knees trembled, but she didn't falter. Her arms outstretched like a tightrope walker learning balance one heartbeat at a time. Halfway across the floor, her legs wobbled. She staggered and then miraculously found her center again. Claire gasped. Daniel's hands twitched, resisting the urge to rush in. 3 more steps, and then she reached him. Lily stumbled into his arms not because she was falling, but because she was flying. "I did it." She breathed against his chest. "I really did it." Daniel knelt, holding her tightly, but his face didn't light up the way they expected. His eyes had gone somewhere else, distant, haunted. Claire moved closer gently, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You did more than walk," she whispered. "You broke the ceiling we all believed was permanent." Lily looked up at Daniel. "Why aren't you smiling?" He blinked. "Once, twice. Because you remind me that the impossible isn't always a lie." Then he stood, offered Lily a soft pat on the head, and walked out of the room. Not in celebration, in retreat. Daniel didn't show up the next morning, or the next. The therapy room stayed dark. Micah ate his cereal in silence, pushing it around with his spoon. Claire tried not to look worried, but Lily noticed. "Is he okay?" she asked. "He's tired," Claire offered weakly. "Sometimes grown-ups get tired in places sleep can't reach." Lily looked toward the therapy room. "Is it because I walked?" Claire knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, no. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." "Then why does it feel like I did something wrong?" Claire hugged her, tightly, because sometimes when people carry pain for too long, joy feels like guilt, especially when they think they don't deserve it. That evening, Claire found Micah sitting outside on the porch steps. His arms were crossed, a toy wrench in his hand, the kind from a pretend mechanic kit. "He always fixes things," he muttered. "But he never lets us fix him." Claire sat beside him. "He's afraid. Not of you or Lily. Of himself." Micah's jaw tightened, but he said, "If you fall, the point is getting back up." Claire looked at him surprised. "He told you that?" "Yeah, when I asked why he looked sad when Lily walked." Claire exhaled. "He's scared he might fall again. And this time, maybe he doesn't know if he'll get back up." Micah didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, maybe he needs someone to hold out their hand. 2 more days passed. Then, on a quiet Thursday morning, Daniel returned. He didn't knock, didn't speak. He walked into the therapy room and stood there for a long time, staring at the mat where Lily had taken her first independent steps. Claire entered behind him. He didn't turn around. "You disappeared," she said. "I didn't mean to, but you did." He nodded. "I thought I'd feel proud, relieved. I thought I'd cry for the right reasons this time." He turned finally and looked at her. "But I didn't. I panicked. Because in that moment, I saw her walk, and I saw Grace fall. At the same time, Claire stepped forward. Daniel. It wasn't her fault, he said, and maybe it wasn't mine either, but it was mine to carry. And when Lily walked, I felt light, and that scared me more than the guilt ever did. Claire reached for his hand. Because if you let go of the guilt, what's left? Exactly, he whispered. Maybe something new, something better, something you never thought you were allowed to have. They stood in silence. Then Daniel spoke again. I need to say something to her. Then come with me, Claire said. Lily was in the backyard balancing a spoon on her nose while Micah timed her with a stopwatch. She saw Daniel and straightened up the spoon clattering to the ground. Hi, she said, unsure. Daniel knelt beside her. I owe you an apology. Lily tilted her head. Why? Because when you did the impossible, I walked away. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I didn't think I deserved to be there for it. He swallowed. But the truth is, that moment was yours, not mine. And I'm grateful you let me witness it, even if I didn't have the courage to stay. Lily reached out and took his hand. You were there when it mattered, and you came back. That's what heroes do. Daniel smiled, for the first time fully. Then I'll try to be the hero who stays. That night, the lights in the therapy room glowed warm again. Daniel placed a sticky note on the mirror Lily had trained with for months. In small, blocky letters it read, You walked through fear. You walked through fire. And you never looked back. Lily saw it the next morning and grinned. Claire watched from the hallway, her hand resting over her heart. Micah whispered to his dad, You're smiling this time. Daniel nodded. Because sometimes healing hurts most when it's working. The late autumn air smelled of pine and burnt leaves. Daniel stood at the window watching Lily and Micah in the yard. She was walking again this time with rhythm, not just resolve. Her arms out for balance, feet planted with purpose. He could hear Micah counting steps. 9, 10, 11. You're beating your record. Lily threw her hands in the air, laughing. Micah, you're my favorite cheerleader. Daniel smiled softly, but his chest tightened. The house had grown too quiet around him. Behind him, Claire entered with a mug of warm cider, handing it to him without a word. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the children. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was loaded. Claire finally spoke. You look like you're holding your breath. Daniel nodded without looking at her. Sometimes I am. Every time she lifts her foot, I wonder if this is the time it won't come down. Claire sipped her drink. And yet, you keep showing up. Maybe showing up is the only thing I'm good at now. Claire turned to him. No. What you're good at is seeing people. Not fixing them. Seeing them. Daniel's jaw tightened. Funny, I've spent so many years trying to be invisible. Later that night, they sat on the back porch under a sky full of stars. Micah had gone to bed after building a pillow fort universe in the living room. Lily was asleep in Claire's room upstairs, a copy of Little Women open on her chest. The air buzzed with the kind of quiet that usually comes after a storm, but before the next one. Claire finally broke it. Do you ever wonder if you're healing someone else just to avoid healing yourself? Daniel chuckled without humor. All the time. I think I've been pouring all my light into other people hoping no one would notice my own house burned down. Claire stared at him. I noticed. Daniel turned his head. And I didn't run. He nodded slowly. I didn't think I was worth staying for. Claire whispered, That's your past talking, not me. They sat for a while in stillness. Then Claire said something that caught him off guard. I think Lily believes in you more than she's ever believed in herself. Daniel looked down. That scares me more than anything. Why? Because if I fail, it'll teach her the wrong lesson. Claire shook her head. If you fail and own it, it might teach her the right one. The next morning was gray with soft drizzle. Daniel entered the therapy room to find Lily already stretching. She didn't look up. I dreamed I was running. Daniel smiled. How far? Through a forest, past everything I used to be afraid of. He nodded. Let's chase that dream today. She turned to him, serious now. Before we start, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you believe I'll walk forever? Not just a few steps, not just here, like at school, at the mall, in the world. Daniel paused. The question weighed heavier than it seemed. Yes, he said finally, because you already are. But I still fall sometimes. Falling isn't failing. Staying down is. You say that like you've done both. Daniel met her eyes. I have. But I'm still here, right? Lily gave a small smile. Then maybe I'll be here too. That evening, as rain tapped gently on the roof, Claire found Lily staring out the window deep in thought. She sat beside her. Something on your mind? Lily hesitated. Why don't you laugh anymore? Claire blinked. I do. Not like before. I saw a picture once. You were holding me. You were smiling with your whole face. Claire looked away. Life has a way of shaving pieces off you. Lily nodded, then said the sentence that would live in Claire's soul forever. Maybe Daniel isn't just helping me walk. Maybe he's helping you feel again. Claire's breath caught. Why do you say that? Because I see the way you look at him when he's not looking back. Claire swallowed. And how do I look at him? Lily smiled gently. Like you're remembering what hope feels like. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She walked into the dark kitchen and found Daniel sitting there nursing a cup of cold coffee, eyes lost somewhere far away. Can't sleep? She asked. He shook his head. Some things don't go quiet just because the world does. Claire sat across from him. They didn't speak for a while. Then she said, I'm scared too. Daniel looked up. Of what? Of needing someone again. Daniel's voice was barely audible. Then we're both scared of the same thing. Claire reached across the table, letting her fingers touch his. I don't know where this is going, Daniel. I don't need an answer tonight. But if you keep showing up, so will I. Outside, the rain had stopped, and somewhere in the middle of that night something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for two broken people to realize they weren't alone anymore, not in their pain, not in their hope, not in their healing. The morning was unusually still. Even the wind, which had howled for days through the trees outside Daniel's house, had gone quiet, as if the world was holding its breath. Daniel stood in the kitchen drying dishes from breakfast. Lily had taken 5 unaided steps that morning, 5 small miracles stitched into the fabric of a new normal. Micah had cheered, Claire had clapped, and Daniel, he had swallowed a lump in his throat the size of a stone. It was working. The impossible was slowly becoming routine. Then the doorbell rang. He didn't recognize the sound at first. No one rang the bell here. People knocked if they came at all. He opened the door. A man in a gray postal uniform handed him a small, aged envelope. Certified. Needs a signature. Daniel scribbled on the electronic pad and took the envelope in his hand like it might burn him. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. His hands trembled before he even opened it. He sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the letter like it might explode. When he finally opened it, his heart stopped for a beat. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Daniel. You disappeared. I don't blame you. I just thought you should know. She passed away 6 months ago. She asked for you before the end. I said I didn't know where you were. I hope you found something that gives you peace. You deserved more than what happened. We all did. Mark Daniel read it 3 times. The name she didn't need to be spelled out. Emily. The little girl he couldn't save. The girl he had pushed too far. Trusted too much. The girl whose spinal cord snapped because he believed she was ready when she wasn't. The girl who had once laughed just like Lily. Daniel folded the letter carefully like one might fold an old scar back into the body. He didn't cry. He couldn't. He was too far inside the freeze. Claire noticed the change the moment she walked in. "You okay?" Daniel didn't answer. He stood at the sink, hands gripping the counter. "Daniel, I need to step out for a bit." "What happened?" He turned around slowly. "I got a letter. From the past." Claire's eyes softened. "Do you want to talk about it?" Daniel shook his head. "I'm afraid if I start, I won't stop." He walked to the park down the street, an old place with rusted swings and chipped benches. He sat on the furthest one, pulled the letter out again, and stared. "She asked for me," he whispered. "She still thought I was worth asking for." It undid him. He buried his face in his hands. All these years trying to build something out of silence, out of guilt. And now the silence had sent him a message back. You were missed, you mattered, and you didn't come. Claire didn't push. She waited for him to come home on his own. That evening after dinner, when Lily and Micah were watching a movie, Daniel stepped outside onto the porch. Claire followed. "Do you remember the first day we met?" he asked. "Micah said you could help Lily, and you tried to deny it." "I didn't try. I did." He looked out into the darkness. There was a girl, years ago, Emily. She was bright, brave, just like Lily. I believed in her so much. I made a mistake. One push too far. One therapy session too soon. Claire stayed quiet. She ended up in worse shape. Lost everything. I lost everything after that, too. Is that why you left the profession? Daniel nodded. It wasn't just guilt. It was grief and cowardice. I didn't think I deserved to ever help anyone again. Claire stepped closer. You were human. You still are. Daniel looked at her. But what if I fail Lily too? Then we'll catch her together. That night, Lily asked to talk before bed. Daniel sat on the edge of the mattress. You seem sad today, she said. Some days carry more weight than others. She reached for his hand. You don't always have to carry it alone. Daniel smiled weakly. You sound like someone who's walked through more than she lets on. I've been sitting still for years. I've had time to learn things. Like what Lily tilted her head. That helping people doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means you have to stay. Daniel's throat tightened. I'll stay. Then I will, too. Later that evening, Daniel sat down with Claire again, this time with a journal in hand. I've been thinking, he said, about what happens after Lily walks again. Claire looked surprised. You're already thinking that far ahead. I have to. I can't keep treating healing like a finish line. Claire nodded. So what's the plan? A space. A real one. Not just in this living room or my old boxes of equipment. A place where kids like Lily, like Emily, can come and be seen. Claire smiled. And who will run this space? Daniel paused. Maybe. Someone who stopped running. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Micah. Lily wants to show you both something. They followed him to the therapy room. Lily was standing without the bars. Just standing. Arms out, knees shaking, but she was there. Micah held his breath. Claire covered her mouth. Daniel stepped forward, but Lily held up a hand. Don't help. Just watch. And for 7 full seconds she stood, not just on her legs, but on everything Daniel had forgotten how to believe in. The rain came soft that evening, like a memory returning in slow motion. Claire sat by the window watching it trace slow tears down the glass. Inside the house, all was still, Micah asleep on the couch, Lily tucked under her favorite yellow quilt, the quiet hum of the heater filling the silence with warmth. Daniel hadn't said much since Lily stood on her own. Not because he wasn't proud, but because something inside him had shifted. Something deep. Something scared. Claire heard the door open behind her. Daniel stepped into the soft glow of the kitchen light, his shoulders carrying that familiar weight, equal parts strength and sorrow. "You can come in," she said, not turning from the window. "I won't ask you to talk, but I'll listen if you do." Daniel stood for a moment, then moved to the table and sat down. He stared at his hands like they were strangers. "There's a part of me," he said quietly, "that still waits for it all to fall apart." Claire turned to face him. Her eyes held no judgment, only recognition. "Because it did," once she said gently. Daniel nodded. "More than once. And every time something beautiful happens like Lily standing, I start hearing the clock tick again. Like happiness has an expiration date." "It doesn't," she said. "You sure?" Claire smiled, a little sad. "No, but I'm choosing to believe it doesn't." Daniel exhaled slowly. "That's the part I'm still learning. How to stop bracing for impact long enough to actually feel the joy." She moved closer to the table, sat across from him, elbows resting on the worn wood. "You know, I used to think control was the only way to protect myself. I ran a company with 10,000 employees, made decisions that moved markets. But none of it stopped the world from breaking under my feet the day Lily got hurt." Daniel's eyes softened. "So, what changed you?" she said simply. Silence fell between them, but it wasn't heavy. It was the kind that invited truth to stretch its limbs. "Not just you," Claire added, "but this house. This boy who thinks paper airplanes can fly all the way to heaven. This girl who smiles even when her legs tremble. And you, this man who thinks silence is safer than hope." Daniel blinked. Her words hit like light through a crack. "I thought disappearing made me noble," he whispered. "Like if I punished myself long enough it would balance the scale." Claire reached across the table, not to take his hand, but to place hers palm up beside his. A silent offering. He didn't take it, but he didn't pull away either. Maybe, she said, redemption doesn't come from running from the pain, Daniel. Maybe it comes from walking through it step by trembling step like Lily. He looked at her then. Really looked. Her face wasn't the cold mask of a CEO. It was tired, open, human. "You scare me," he admitted. "Why?" "Because when I look at you, I start wanting again. And I don't know if I deserve that." Claire's voice dropped. "Daniel, healing doesn't ask if you deserve it. It just waits to see if you'll reach for it." Later that night, Daniel stood outside Lily's room watching her sleep. Micah was curled up on a sleeping bag beside her bed, breathing evenly, one hand still clutching the corner of her quilt. Daniel smiled. Then Lily stirred. "Dad," she murmured. He stepped closer. "Yeah, baby. I'm here." Was today real? Daniel sat on the edge of her bed. Every second of it. She reached out, touched his arm. "Then I think I'm not broken anymore." Daniel's chest tightened. "You were never broken, Lily. Just waiting to bloom." She smiled, eyes fluttering closed again. "You talk like Mom used to. Before the accident." Daniel paused. She must have been an incredible woman. She was. And so are you. He sat there for a while after she fell back asleep, hand still in hers. The next morning, Claire found him in the backyard, fixing the swing. "You planning to have a line of kids waiting out here soon?" she teased. Daniel looked up. "Maybe." She leaned against the post. "I spoke to someone last night, a woman from my foundation. If we wanted to, we could turn this place into something more permanent. A clinic, a safe space, for families like mine. Like yours." Daniel stood. "And you'd trust me with that?" Claire's voice didn't waver. "I already have." He walked toward her, the morning sun warming his back. "This scares me," he said. "The idea that something good could last." Claire looked at him, really looked. "Then let's be scared together." He stopped just inches away. "I'm not good at saying what I feel." "Then don't say it," she whispered. "Just stay." And so he did. He didn't kiss her, didn't need to, But he reached for her hand, and this time he didn't hesitate. That evening, Daniel found an old box in the attic. Inside were faded photos, hand-drawn diagrams, a dusty clipboard with his name on it from another lifetime. He brought it down, showed it to Claire. "It's time to stop hiding," he said. "If I'm going to help others, they need to know where I came from. The whole story, even the mistakes." She placed a hand on the box. "Then let's build something out of all of it, even the wreckage." As the chapter closed, Daniel stood once more in front of the living room window where it had all begun. Micah ran down the hallway chasing Lily, who was walking unsteadily but determined, her laughter ringing like a bell. Claire leaned on the doorway, coffee in hand. Daniel smiled. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a cliff. It felt like a door. And this time, he was ready to walk through it. It began again on a quiet morning. No headlines, no miracle broadcast. Just the sun peeking through the curtains of a modest home in Montgomery, Alabama, warming the wood floors where laughter now lived. Claire stood at the kitchen island helping Lily butter toast. The girl stood on her own, leaning gently against the counter. Her braces, still there, now looked like allies instead of prison bars. Daniel sat nearby, sipping coffee, watching them like a man who'd woken from a long, dark sleep. Micah bounded into the room, dragging a backpack nearly bigger than him. "Dad," he called. "Do you think if we get a real sign out front, people will know where to find us?" Daniel chuckled. "Well, buddy, a sign helps, but it's what's inside that keeps them coming back." Claire looked up, eyes sparkling. "I'll have my design team draft something. Something simple." "The Ray Center for Restored Motion." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That name's a little long." "Maybe," Claire said with a grin. "But people will remember it, just like they remember the man behind it." Daniel's reply caught in his throat. He wasn't used to being seen like that, not as a ghost of his past, but as something solid present. Someone whose brokenness wasn't hidden but repurposed into strength. Later that day, the backyard filled with people. Not clients, families. Some with children in wheelchairs, others with tremors in their hands, all carrying the invisible weight of being told they've reached the end of hope. Daniel greeted them one by one. No white coat, no fancy titles, just worn jeans, kind eyes, and a quiet conviction that he would try. "We're not promising miracles," he told a mother clutching her son's hand, "but we'll never stop believing in possibility." That afternoon, Lily sat with another girl her age, this one, silent, afraid. Lily, without a word, removed her braces and set them beside her. "I used to be scared, too," she said gently. "But sometimes someone shows up who believes in you more than you do." She pointed toward Daniel, who was showing a boy how to stretch using a tennis ball and a folded towel. "That's my someone." The girl blinked, then smiled. As the sun dipped low and guests began to leave, Claire found Daniel standing by the new sign Micah had drawn in chalk on the sidewalk. "Hope lives here." "Fitting, don't you think?" she said softly. Daniel nodded. "I used to think hope was something that ran out." Claire stepped beside him. "And now I know it just changes shape." They stood in silence, the golden hour wrapping around them like a second chance. Then Claire turned toward him. "You know, I've been thinking," she began. "I've spent my whole life trying to fix things with money, with plans, with control. But the most healing thing that's ever happened to me was sitting on your porch eating soup I didn't even ask for." Daniel laughed. "That soup was terrible. I forgot the salt. Didn't matter," she said. "What mattered was that you saw me. Not as a CEO, not as a mother failing her child, just as a woman who'd run out of answers." Daniel looked at her, something steady in his gaze. "You never failed her. You just hadn't found the right fight yet." She blinked hard. Then something unspoken passed between them. It didn't need music or candlelight or any grand gesture, just the quiet ache of two people who'd walked through fire and were brave enough to stand still in the light. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered. "Neither do I," he said. "But we can build it. Day by day, no guarantees. Just Us. She took his hand. This time, he didn't let go. Months passed. The clinic grew. Not fast, not flashy, but honestly. Daniel trained 2 volunteers, both former patients. Claire managed the logistics, but with a different spirit now. Less iron, more heart. Lily began writing a journal for other kids starting therapy. Micah started calling the porch swing the thinking bench. One morning, Claire handed Daniel an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "The foundation approved the funding. Fully. But there's a catch." "What kind of catch?" She smiled. "They want to name the next center after you?" Daniel frowned. "Claire." "No," she said firmly but tenderly. "You need to stop hiding behind humility like it's nobility. This isn't about ego. It's about truth. And the truth is, you changed lives. Mine. Lily's. And now, so many others." Daniel stared at the envelope. Then slowly he nodded. On the anniversary of Lily's first steps, they held a small gathering. No reporters, no fanfare, just stories. One by one, families stood and shared how hope had returned to their homes. A father described his daughter trying stairs again. A teenager spoke about running a full lap for the first time. A woman in her 50s who'd spent 2 decades in silence whispered the words, "I believe again." When Daniel stood to speak, the crowd grew quiet. He held no notes. "I spent a lot of years believing I didn't deserve to start over," he said. "But then someone's actually looked at me like I wasn't my past. One was 8. The other had a sharper tongue than anyone I'd ever met." Laughter rose gently. Daniel smiled. And in their belief, I started breathing again. So if you're here tonight wondering if you've missed your moment, if life passed you by while you were looking the other way, just know healing isn't a deadline. It's a direction. He looked at Lily, then Claire, then Micah. And sometimes it leads you home. That night, after the guests had left and the stars came out to listen, Daniel, Claire, Lily, and Micah sat on the porch together wrapped in blankets drinking hot chocolate. No words. Just peace. Micah looked up suddenly. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy. Do you think people are going to keep coming?" Daniel looked at the moon, then at the small house behind them now filled with hope and heart and second chances. "I think he said they're already here." And somewhere in the quiet of that night, hope didn't knock. It stayed. And if this story touched your heart even a little, if you found a piece of yourself in Daniel and Claire or in Lily, then take a moment. Breathe it in. Sometimes the quietest stories are the ones that stay with us the longest. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We love seeing how far these stories travel and who they reach. And if you want more stories like this filled with hope, healing, and second chances, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every day we bring you powerful tales that remind us all of what it means to be human. Thank you for spending time with us today. Your presence means more than you know. Until next time, keep believing in the good.